Tonight I'm going to tell a story. It's a good story. It's a story that when it happened, I knew it was going to become a sermon illustration someday. It was early last year, 2020, middle of a pandemic. Kim and I were sitting in the kitchen. We were doing work-related stuff. I'm at my computer typing away. And here comes Olivia. Computer in one hand, notes in the other. And right there on the breakfast bar, she sets up, opens up her laptop, has a PowerPoint presentation ready, and she's ready to present her idea to what we're going to refer to as the investment committee, which would be me and Kim. And she had made a decision that she wanted to be a chicken farmer. And with an initial $300 investment from Kimmy and I, she was successful in convincing us. And with that initial $300 investment, she was able to buy the first month of food, a small coop, and 5 little chickens. We're a year later, and we still have 4 chickens. Yes, one of them he's dead. She's dead. It was a hen. These chickens that we bought, they spent the first couple months in her room in a little plastic tote. And yes, chickens stink. But it was just in her room, and she smelled like stinky chicken, and none of the rest of us did. As they got older and they got a little bit bigger, they moved outside into the little coop that we had bought that was not being used at the time. They finally moved outside, and all the mess went with them. Now, Olivia didn't want to raise meat chickens. She wanted hens for eggs. And as these first 5 grew, we realized that whoever it was at Orchlands did not know how to tell the difference between a hen and a rooster. And we ended up with a rooster in the mix. A lot of people said, well, if you're just doing eggs, you don't need that rooster. Kill him. And I didn't want to kill him. The older I get, the softer I get, I guess. So we didn't kill the rooster. We have a rooster in the mix. We let him, he's the security officer. This rooster runs security for our chicken operation. I'm calling it ours because I'm putting in just about as much of an investment anymore as she is. But this rooster runs security, and the only problem is there's times that he takes that job very seriously. Whether it's a curious little kid, I tell you, Liam, he'll run out there and he'll stomp just to get the rooster to chase him, laughing all the way back to the house. But if you go out close to the chicken coop and you are a stranger, that rooster's going to let you know where the boundaries are. Whether it's a little kid or it's one of us, he's definitely there to show you who's boss in the backyard. He's ready to attack, and he wants to assert dominance over his area. Never mind the fact that I paid for the coop and the food and everything else, he still has decided that he is going to show me who's boss. The first time he did it, I was standing at the grill flipping, I think it was burgers I was cooking on the grill, and I felt like somebody had come up and literally punched me right in the back of the calf. And I turn around and he's, twisting that head at me like, I'm going to show you who's boss. About that time, I turned around, boot to the face, and he left me alone for a little bit. Made me mad. We apparently have what they call an aggressive rooster. Apparently that's a common thing. It was only a few weeks ago that Liv went out to feed them, and I think that rooster might have been all jacked up on caffeine and testosterone or something because it was feeling brave, and it went right after her, and she come in and had these welts across her legs, and well, you need to put something on your legs going out there. He got her pretty good, and she's like, Dad, we're going to have to do something about this rooster. I'm like, okay. Liv's like, we might just have to kill it. And I'm like, no. I had a lot of people telling me that I should just kill him. He's not needed for the egg-laying operation. I didn't want to do that, so I decided I was going to Google it. Now, I'm going to tell you, always be careful what you put in the search bar on Google, okay? I'm not saying anymore, but that's all I'm going to tell you. So I went to Google and I put in there, how to deal with an aggressive rooster. That is the best Google search ever. Article after article. And like, you know how you get like a preview of Google images across there? You get these roosters that are like, you know, you get that like a side profile and you get that one beady eye looking at you. And I'm like, that looks like our rooster. I laughed a little as I typed it into the search bar. The first article that I came across, you know, there's always like 3 ads and it tells you it's an ad. If you're familiar with Google, and hopefully, dear Lord, I hope everybody in here is familiar with that, but you always get like 3 ads and then it gives you like your search result. And so that's usually the one that's the most popular, and I clicked it. And I read it and it says, if you have an aggressive rooster, don't challenge him. And I'm like, this article ain't for me. You know, walk away slowly backwards so that he doesn't feel like you're challenging. And I'm like, I'm not bowing to a rooster. This thing's got to understand this is my yard that he's living in. Packed full of advice to turn away and not confront him. Don't antagonize. No, that's bad advice. I'm telling you right now, if you've got a rooster at home, that's bad advice. He will run your yard. The second article was more my speed for free-range chickens. It explained to me, and this made a ton of sense, it explained to me that the rooster saw me as an adversary and a challenger for the affection of his hens. Apparently, I looked like a big rooster to him. He was protecting his flock. It's great, wasn't it? I still wouldn't let Olivia. It says to calm him. He had to understand that I was the one that was dominant in the yard. He said, like, yes, this little like 14-inch tall chicken sitting there and I've got to teach him who's in charge? Are you kidding me? My family's laughing because they know what's coming next. I was amazed. I read through that entire article, and my curiosity definitely won. It definitely won. I had to figure out a way to assert dominance in the yard. And it said in that article that when the rooster looks like he's about to attack, which means I stepped out my back door, it says when that rooster looks like he's about to attack, that I needed to flap my arms, stomp my feet, and crow back at that chicken. Oh yeah, and I had to flap my wings. So, I'm a guy that if I see something like that, I'm like, well, you know, they say don't press the button. I've got to see what happens when you press the button. And so I decided that I had to try it. I had to calm this rooster. It was all in the name of protecting my children. That's what it was. And I had to protect my kids from this aggressive rooster and every other kid. And so I went out to assert dominance with this rooster. So I got both girls and we went outside. Of course, immediately the iPhones come out and I'm like, put them away. This is not for everybody's eyes, just for my children. And they were out in the backyard kind of roaming around, and they were eating and just pecking at the ground, eating, I think, rocks and everything else. I don't know. They're dumb. Chickens are dumb. But as soon as I stepped out, you see that red comb just boom, right up. Like his radar went off, like I had entered his area. And the little head turns and it's looking at me. And so he runs over and he gets about, if you've been in my backyard, you walk out the back door onto the deck. There's the pool right there. He had come up this way around the pool. And so I thought, here we go. I had boots on and jeans on because I wasn't messing around in case I lost. I didn't want to get messed up by no chicken. So I get out there and he's standing there and I step down there, and I get on. As soon as my feet hit the grass, his head goes, and those neck feathers, they start to spread out. And then he's, you know, he's crowing at me. He's letting me know that I'm in his area. And then, like, what are you going to do, old man? About that time, I'm like, oh, you know, testosterone is pumping, adrenaline is pumping. And I'm like, oh, I'm the dominant one in the yard now. I got your number, chicken. I had it. I'm telling you. And that thing's standing there, and he rears back like he's getting ready to run, beak first, straight at my legs. About that time, I went, boom. That chicken stopped dead in its tracks, looked up at me, and just sat there for a second, and then stopped, pecked the ground, looked back up at me casually, and then boom, off around the side of the pool. He was gone. It is hilarious. I won. Here's the best part. He's still aggressive and mean. But I can walk out the back door, and that thing will run off to the wood line on the other side of the yard. And if I walk over to that side of the yard, he'll go to the other side. He wants nothing to do with me. I knew as soon as it had happened. I think you and I even talked about it, that this is going to be an excellent sermon illustration someday. Well, here it is. More than a week after this whole thing took place, he wouldn't come near me. He stood off in the distance watching me with a respect that's only found in the animal kingdom, I can tell you. I won. Now I'm going to tell you, as much as I love telling that story, I really didn't have to do much. Google gave me the information that I needed to communicate my dominance to a chicken, and now I rule my own backyard again. I don't rule over much, but my backyard is one of those places, it's mine. Knowing the rules of the game will change how you play the game. The rooster had this idea that was his yard, even though he didn't pay for nothing. But that was his spot, his yard, his hens, and I was in interference. I was in the middle of his plan, and he did not like that. So he was playing by a different set of rules than what I was. And once I learned the set of rules, I was able to go out there, assert dominance, and now that's my chicken yard. Today, before we leave this place, I want to make sure that you know the rules, because it's going to change how you play the game. If we go to 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, it says, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour." I'm going to draw a Midwestern parallel here and tell you that the Bible likens him to a roaring lion, but we don't have lions around here. I'm going to say more like an aggressive rooster. I get it that there are times that we feel trapped. We are stuck in the house because we don't know where the danger lurks. My mother-in-law came over for Thanksgiving, and because of that rooster's behavior, she would not walk out of the house until she was ready to go to her car. I think we found a way to help her quit smoking. At least at our house. Because she wouldn't even step outside because she was afraid that rooster was going to attack. Sometimes we get trapped. We get to a place where we're hiding at home because we're not sure what's going to come next. And we don't want to risk one more attack. We just can't take it. John chapter 10 verse 10 says, "The thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly." This verse compares him to a thief. All the devil wants to do is take everything of value to hurt you and even kill you if he can. The Lord steps in his way, and the Lord is here that we may have abundant life, free from the fear of our enemy. I spent a lot of time and money making that backyard area the place that I want to go and hang out. And none of us could because of a rooster that was and taken the entire backyard hostage. That was my backyard. How many times do we lose ground because we're afraid of an attack? And all that time and investment that we had, we lose ground because, the devil. But James chapter 4 verse 7 says, submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Here is the rule of the game. When we submit to God and we learn how the game of life is played, we're able to resist the devil. We realize under all that puff of feathers is a scrawny little chicken. We realize the big thief, the roaring lion, the enemy, isn't quite so intimidating at all when you realize that you have Jesus Christ, creator of everything, on your side. Sometimes I wonder how Christians can logically come to the conclusion that it's okay to live in bondage, it's okay to live in fear, it's okay to live in sin, it's okay to live like everybody else in the world, when we have Jesus Christ who's promised us freedom, who's promised us a better life. Abundant life is what we just read. And instead we sit cowering inside because we're afraid of what may lurk outside of those boundaries. I'm not afraid of tomorrow. I'm not afraid of political or social uncertainty. I'm not afraid of financial uncertainty. I am not afraid of the devil. I'm not afraid because I know who I belong to. I'm not afraid of death and dying. I'm not afraid of those things because I know ultimately who holds me in his hands. I think it's time that we come to a revelation of who we are, who we belong to, and the fact that a boot to the head is enough to run our enemy off. Walking in victory in Jesus is a matter of identity, of realizing who we are, because it will change our behavior. I remember as a kid, some of the neighbor kids picking on me, and they chased me back into my yard. What they didn't realize was that my dad was in the kitchen watching the whole thing take place. And I made it around the house. That kid was chasing me. He was going to hurt me. And then my dad come busting out of that house. And the kid saw my dad, and the fear of God went through his body. And he stopped right there and took off, kind of like what that rooster did. We got to realize who we have in our corner, who's watching over us, who takes care of everything, who understands and knows every hair on our head. The more that we learn to submit to the Lord, to rely on Him, the more freedom we have from the bondage of sin, from the bondage of fear, and all of those things that get into our lives. I'm not going to be stuck in the house with my offenses, my secret sins, or my fears. I'm going to walk into what the Lord has for me, what is rightfully mine, and with the help of the Lord, I'm going to assert His dominance over the forces of darkness that plague our society. When I walked into that backyard with that right information, I'll be honest, I'm not worried about like mortal danger with the chicken, but I didn't want my legs all clawed up either. And so when I would open the door, I'd look out first and then figure out where he was, and then I'd go to my car or whatever. And if he come anywhere near me, I'd stop and I'd look at him, because I didn't want him coming after me with me not knowing. But when I knew what was going on, why he was acting that way, I almost went out in the yard looking for a fight. I want you to think about that for a second. I wasn't worried. I wasn't cautious. I zeroed in on my target. One mean, aggressive rooster. I went with the necessary information to win the battle. It was a very simple thing at that point. All I had to do was stomp my feet and wave my arms and yell at him. I want each of you to have the necessary tools and the understanding that you don't have to live in fear or shame. Jesus says it in His Word and backs it up with His actions. I talked a few weeks ago about the woman with the issue of blood, and one of the main things that had to happen was she just had to come to a place where I'm not going to live with this anymore. She had to make the decision, and I think it's the same thing here. I dealt with that rooster for how many months? A long time. And it was constantly an issue, and everybody's telling me the rooster's chasing so-and-so. I don't have to anymore. I'm the boss. But we get to a point where we're almost just catatonic. We spiritually just frozen because we're afraid of what's coming next. I've had people tell me, I'm not sure that I want to pray for this miraculous thing or that, because if it happens, if the Lord does something, then the devil's going to come after me. So? Bring it on. Do you know who I have on my side? I just can't seem to defeat this sin. Take it to the Lord and deal with it. John chapter 8, verse 36. If the Son therefore shall make you free, ye shall be free indeed. No conditions, no, just one more thing. It's simply that. He did not save us to sit inside in fear. It's time to get up, face the enemy, be confident, and remember who holds your world in His hands. That dumb chicken. I'm out in the backyard. I'm going to help this picture out a little bit. In our backyard right now, I've mentioned it this morning, I have built this 8x8 chicken coop. Like, it's big, because we're going back up to Orson's. This time, make sure that you get somebody that knows what they're looking at, so we don't end up with like 4 more roosters or something. But we're building this bigger coop because we're getting more hens, because we want to have eggs and all that business, right? I wouldn't mind, I'm telling you, like, I wanted to put a Raising Cane's restaurant logo on the side of the chicken coop, and Olivia has decided that that's not as funny as we thought it was, and we don't get to do that, so we're going to call it the Chicken Palace instead. But we got this 8x8 coop in the backyard that we're working on. I'm waiting for a few more materials to come in. It's going to be really nice. And we're talking about getting didn't we say 25 more chickens, Olivia? Something like that? No, not really. We're talking maybe 16. We're going to go to 20 chickens. It's not that bad. And that one rooster will be the only one in the flock, hopefully, running security over his girls. But I'm not going to keep doing that stuff if I'm afraid of a rooster. Ain't nothing better than fresh laid eggs from a free-range chicken. The flavor is so much different. We got to deal with an aggressive rooster. Unless I just kill that thing, then I'm not dealing with him at all after that. But I'm not that guy. I'm not going to do it. I know that right now we have a lot of people that are gone. And then anytime you have a big part of your crowd that's gone, it's like it's pulling teeth to kind of have that kind of the service that you should have. It's almost like the Lord don't move because you got people that are gone, and I don't believe that. But we got people that come to our church. And I'm not going to look at anybody because I'm not going to call anybody out. We got people that go to our church and they live a life in fear. Various different things. We have some that are living in bondage to sin, and maybe they're just not ready to be free from that. I don't know. We have some that come in here and they're just afraid. They're beat down. They're doing their best to get through. They're worried about what tomorrow's going to hold. We have some that are dealing with life situations that are just terrible. And we just hide in the house. We're okay once we get in the building. It's comfortable here. Ain't nobody going to attack you here. But the minute you walk out those doors and pick up that real life, and you got to go back to work, and you got to go back home, or wherever those situations are, and you're terrified, you're struggling, you feel alone, and you feel like the Lord's on your side when you walk in here and you get pumped up in service and, oh man, the Lord's so good and He's going to take care of me. And then you walk out and it's really dark out. And those situations are just right there in your face. And the Rooster story is funny. It really is. But it doesn't change the fact that when I'm done preaching, we have an altar call, and then after that, you get to go back home. And that fear is real. It's very important that when we get ready to have an altar call in just a few minutes, I'm about done. Where's Alyssa at for me to harass? She's in Branson with her boyfriend. It's very important. I want you to hear me. It's very important that you don't leave here without the necessary information and tool set to win against your enemy. I don't know what it's going to look like for you when you get back home. I don't know what sin you're going to face, what medical diagnosis you'll face, what fear you're going to face, what situation you got waiting for you at home, the uncertainty of finances. I don't know, and honestly, I don't have the ability to make any of that stuff better for you, but I know who does. And I know that if you walk out of here armed with the right information and the right tool set, you don't have to live in that fear. Even in the middle of a situation, God can take away fear. And far too long, God's people have been diminished and hurt by the fear that the enemy plagues us with. And the thing is we don't have to be. I had a much different direction for a closing here. I just feel like the Lord is really wanting to help somebody out tonight. You do not have to go home and live the rest of this week in fear. If you'll all stand. I know that there are a lot of our leadership team that's out. I know that it's a smaller service. I know that I told Bishop, sometimes you have great services that you're excited about, and then there are some that you just have to get through. And those ones that you get through are just as important as the ones that you shout about. Because there's work done in services like this. I think sometimes we get to a point where we'll come up and we'll say our prayer quietly under our breath and, thank you, Lord, for touching me and for blessing my life and all that business. And we walk out without ever really pushing through to any kind of victory. I believe tonight that on the table, better yet on the altar, there is victory that you can walk away with over sin, over fear, over life situations, over all of that stuff. I believe that the Lord will give that to you. But you may have to push a little bit. Whether anybody's praying with you or not, whether or not anybody's doing anything right next to you, or whether or not you're feeling anything or your emotions are heightened, there may be something that if you'll press a little bit, that the Lord will help you through some of this. So this altar's open. I invite you today. Come, press through the crowd. Find your place at the altar and walk out of here changed. I'm asking you today, please don't go home and deal with the same situation in the same way when the Lord has victory right here for you today.